how did late modern empires determine the allocation of their budgets, given that they have many competing priorities? There's lots of new opportunities. There's new technologies, new ways of growth. So these make for new choices that these governments have to decide on. These were new choices. They didn't have the advantage of learning from their own history. I'm specifically going to talk about spending policy because I'm interested in how governments allocate their budgets. The first priority of a regime is to obtain a monopoly on violence. That translates into spending on repressive capacity. These types of spending, while they improve the opposition's valuation of the regime, they can aid the opposition in the rebellion. So the main hypothesis is, as revenue increases, the share of spending on repressive capacity decreases, and the share of spending on the public increases. Over time, revenue is increasing. Also over time, in general, repression as a share of total expenses is decreasing, and the share of public spending is increasing. The sample can be expanded for further testing. We think that this should generalize across major and minor powers of the time. Also, the argument is pretty simple. It could generalize to contemporary dictatorships and democracies because both of these types of governments need to maintain stability.
It is very difficult to tax the wealthy. How do the degree of rule of law in a country and the security of private property affect the tax compliance behavior of the wealthy? I ask how the ruler tying his own hands affect his capacity to raise taxes. Wealthy's wealth sheltering occurs more often when there is weaker rule of law. During wartime, when wealthy's predatory actions might be more common, people's wealth sheltering increase only under weaker rule of law because the ruler is not constrained. But this relationship disappears once there's a switch to strong rule of law. Wars increase the state's fiscal capacity under strong rule of law, but it cannot under weak rule of law because people engage in wealth sheltering. One way how states can decrease wealth sheltering of the wealthy and convince them to pay taxes might be to convince them that there are less uncertainties about the ruler's actions and make them more sure what percent of their property is going to be taxed. Strong rule of law and the security of people's property might be very critical for building of fiscal capacity, for the capacity of the states to tax the populations. It might be necessary for the war-make-state relationship to work. It might also be one reason why we have seen a lot of works that find this war-make-state relationship to be not applicable to contexts outside of Western Europe.